What is up, everybody? This is Caidicus, and today I'm making a video about using the mixer and the track arrangement in the OP-1. Now, I'm sorry for this aspect ratio. I know it's not sitting sideways like this. The reason for that is because I need to kind of like hold the phone easily in my hand, and it's kind of hard to hold sideways as well as do things at the same time. So please forgive my aspect ratio. I know this is a cardinal sin of YouTube. So let's, get beyond that, and let's go to what I'm talking about with the track arrangement. Now, if you're making a song in the track mode of the OP-1, which I do all the time, let's just make sure there's sound here. Yay, there's sound. Okay, so if you're making a track, let's say track 1, 2, 3, and 4, but let's say making a track as in a song, you're going to have 4 different tracks on here. So if I hold shift, you can see that there's 4 lines and then the one line at the very top, but there's 4 together in the bottom, okay? So that means that if I play this, this is track 1, here's track 2, track 3, and track 4. Now you'll hear on track 3, hold on a sec here, let me just go back a little bit. Rewind! Okay, you'll hear on track 3 if I play it. There's actually 2 things playing on track 3. So what that means is with the OP-1 in the track mode, you can actually do more than 4 tracks because you can overdub endlessly on each track. So you can actually do multiple things on each track. But then you might be wondering, how do you mix something like that? How do you make sure that things line up very well so that they don't sound overpowering and whatever? Well, basically the key thing to remember is organize. So if I go to the mixer here and I've got this is track 1, this is track 2, this is track 3, and this is track 4. You'll notice that their levels aren't all the same. This is where I always put my drums on, or drum-like sounds. That's on track 1. So in here, the top. Let's just go a little bit forward here. Yeah, the top one there that isn't there in this part of the song, but that's track 1. Track 2 is my bass line, and it's usually bassy things. Now, bassy things usually have a harder time standing out when you've got high-toned sounds that are high-toned over it. So bass line is usually a bit higher. In this case, it's 99 because I'm using a sine wave bass line, which is very soft. And in this one, it's my 3rd track. And in this one, I have pads or strings or piano sounds or whatever. And in 4, it's also leads, pianos, pads, whatever in there as well. But you'll see that this one, the volume is at 50 and this one is at 99. That's because if I have any pad-like or string sounds, something like that, that are kind of soft, I'll put them in 4. And if I have any loud things, samples that are loud or whatever, and I can't really make them sound quieter, I'll put them in track 3. So even though they're similar to the kinds of sounds in 4, they are softer by nature. Softer by nature, so they go in 4. They're harder by nature, so they go in 3. So that's how I organize my songs always, is to have from track 1, 2, 3, and 4. I have drums, bassy sounds and bass lines, abrasive or loud sounding leads or samples, and then quieter or pad or synth, softer stuff going into here. And then when I tune it in here, I can make slight adjustments to the levels by turning the knobs. But generally speaking, because I keep my pattern the same, I keep my structure the same, I don't have to I'll usually be looking at a low 3, a high 4, a high 2, and a low 1. So that way it's always organized. But how does this tie into the EQ? Let's go into the mixer screen and then to level 2 right here. You see EQ, there's max EQ and then clean. If I go to clean down here, it basically brings everything down. We'll play it. So it's kind of quiet. And while I'm doing that, sorry for this stuff right here. My daughter spilled milk all over my speaker. Okay, so I'll just keep playing it here. Let's just skip ahead a little bit. Skip ahead some more. It's very soft. See? Now let's turn up just the overall EQ here. Down. Up. Down. Up. Okay, that's max EQ right there. Now I can, of course, adjust. Let's turn the mid all the way down. It's quite nice. Keeps the highs high, so like the reverb on the drums sounds really good. Turn that up. Turn the highs down. Turn it up. Let's do master EQ down. Master EQ up. Okay, so basically what I've done here by mixing it this way, by having a set structure, I mean, you can choose to have your beat in 4 and your bass in 3 and whatever. I like to have my beat in 1, my bass in 2, my loud lead or whatever, like, yeah, my loud lead sounds in 3, and my quieter things in 4. My louder things are in 3, so the volume is at 50, which means the louder things are quieter and they don't overpower whatever I'm making for a song. My quieter stuff is in 4, which is amped up a lot, so that because they're quieter sounds that I've chosen in there, they stand out a lot more. They're able to like keep their own. But it's worth remembering that when you go to the max EQ here, it's going to bring a lot of your very quiet sounds more up front. It's not going to overpower. I found the EQ works really well. It balances things really well. In fact, I've made like a clean song, and it was like sitting about there by like naturally, and the like softer pad sounds or whatever, when I like played it back, I almost couldn't hear them at all. I had to know that they were there to know that they were there, because I wrote the song, so I knew they were there. I could hear them, but if I wasn't listening for them, I wouldn't have been able to hear them. Then I turned up the EQ and I printed the song into an MP3 and I listened and I was like, oh, this is awesome. It just made it sound so much more three-dimensional and great to listen to. So if you have that structure of where you're balancing things out for your drums, subs, quieter pads and strings, and then louder pads and strings. And remember, you can go to any track, like go to track 2, and even though there's something on it, there's a bass line there. If I wanted to, I could go into here and I could find another sound that's also bassy. I turn down the octave. That's kind of a bassy, or like, not bassy, but it's a lower octave sound. Right? It's a lower octave sound, so I could record that into 2. So I could go back to the tape here, I could hold record, and then start playing, and it will overdub onto that track. Now, if this was a loud sound, and I started overdubbing onto a loud track, then it wouldn't sound very good, and then that was what would throw off the EQ really badly. When you go back into the screen and go into the EQ, because you haven't balanced things of having lows, or like loud things are in lower mixed, and quiet things are higher mixed. If you didn't have things set in your track properly, so let's say you record something that's loud into a loud track, that thing's peak volume is so much higher than anything else that even the EQ can't really deal with it. But if I were to record a low sound into a higher volume track, then the EQ would have no problem bringing it into the mix and making it sound a lot better. So that's it for this video. It's almost 10 minutes long. I hope this is a better explanation than the last one where I was talking about how great the EQ is. I made a video yesterday about how awesome I think the EQ is on the OP-1. If you want, you can check that out. It's basically just talking about it, but you've pretty much seen and heard everything I was bragging about yesterday about the EQ in today's video. This EQ is fantastic. One more time, let's just play the track and let's hear it with no EQ and then turn it up. It's also important to remember that, like, when I turn up the EQ, it turns up the volume, but the key thing here is when it turns up the volume, it doesn't peak anything out, doesn't suddenly make like things scratchy and terrible sounding. It brings up the volume immensely, and it brings up the volume of the volume, like the width of it, immensely without peaking the song out. So let's have a go of it. Just fast forward a little bit. And now we'll just end on this. EQ is off, let's turn it up and then end. All the way off. And up. Well, that's it for my video for today. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope to see you guys next time. If you haven't, then give me a like or a dislike or whatever you want, and sub if you want to. And yeah, that's it. Thanks guys. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. This is Caidicus, out.